The stranger stood tall in the courtroom, chin raised, voice dripping with arrogance. "You're like a monkey," he said, loud, certain, and smiling like he'd just won something. Gasps rippled through the room. Even the bailiff froze mid-step. Judge Judy didn't flinch, her stare cut sharper than any gavel, and when she finally opened her mouth, everyone understood. This man had just made the biggest mistake of his life. This wasn't the end. Brother, this was just the beginning. The gavel hadn't even struck yet, but tension was already thick enough to cut. Judge Judy sat perfectly still, posture sharp, eyes steady, her hands resting like twin verdicts on the bench. Across from her stood a teenager, who looked more like he'd wandered into detention than a courtroom. His name was Jason. 17, baseball cap backward, grin nailed on his face like armor. The insult still hung in the air. "Monkey!" The word echoed off the paneled walls and landed somewhere between shock and disbelief. The audience gasped. So even the bailiff, a man who had seen years of chaos in that courtroom, blinked twice before looking at Judy. But she didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't even look offended. Her silence was colder than fury, and twice as dangerous. Jason leaned back in his chair, lacing his fingers behind his head like he owned the place. "What?" he said, smirking. "It's just a joke." Judge Judy's eyes finally rose. The kind of gaze that doesn't just see you, it weighs you. "A joke," she repeated, voice calm as polished glass. "You think respect is a punchline?" The teen chuckled, shrugging. "It's just words. You people take everything so serious." "What you people?" she echoed. The courtroom's quiet deepened, the kind of silence that hums. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "In this room, words have weight, and right now you're sinking under your own." The plaintiff, an elderly man in a brown jacket, sat on the opposite side of the room. He hadn't spoken since the insult, but his eyes told the whole story. Humiliation mixed with something softer, something like pity. The kind that hurts more than anger. Judy turned toward him. "Mr. Whitaker, please confirm what this young man is being sued for." The old man cleared his throat. "He and 2 others vandalized my store, Your Honor. Broke shelves, stole candy, spray-painted walls." His voice cracked slightly on the last word. "It's been my store for 31 years, Jason yawned. "It's just a store. Insurance will cover it." A sharp exhale swept through the audience. Judy didn't interrupt. She let the sound of the room turn against him. Then she spoke, voice low, deliberate. "Son, insurance can replace glass. Not dignity." Jason laughed, and loud, defiant. The kind of laugh that hides fear. "Oh, come on. You're really going to act like this is some big moral lesson?" He started, but stopped when Judy raised one finger. The silence that followed was surgical. She leaned forward slightly, her eyes narrowing, tone steady enough to cut through marble. "Do you know what respect costs?" Jason tilted his head, smirk unwavering. "Apparently everything." The camera lingered on Judy's face. Wait, no anger, no emotion, just something colder, quieter. Judgment. Then the faintest movement, a signal to her clerk. The clerk pressed a button under the bench. The screen behind Jason flickered to life, and for the first time that morning, his smirk began to fade. The screen glowed blue behind Jason, humming faintly. The courtroom lights dimmed just enough for the footage to come alive. Judge Judy didn't say a word. She simply gestured toward it. "Play it." The first frame showed a familiar storefront, the same brown awning, the same old bell above the door that now hung crooked in real life. Then came the laughter. Jason's laughter. Loud, young, and reckless. On screen, he and 2 boys kicked over a candy display. Shelves crashed, glass shattered, and his voice echoed. The same cocky tone now sitting across from the judge. He looked smaller on video. Not younger, smaller. "Like arrogance shrinks a person when truth catches up," the crowd murmured. Someone whispered, "That's him, right there." Jason shifted in his chair. "So what? Everyone makes mistakes." Judy's eyes didn't blink. "Is that what you call stealing and destruction?" "It's just property," Jason said, voice firm, but his knee bounced under the table. "Besides, he's fine." Mr. Whitaker, the store owner, stared straight ahead. "I'm not fine," he said quietly. "That store is my life. You didn't just break things. You made people afraid to walk in again." Jason rolled his eyes. "Drama much?" The room inhaled collectively, and Judy finally leaned forward. "Watch your tone." Jason leaned back instead, grinning. Why? I already said sorry. You said whatever, not sorry, Judy corrected. Those are not the same words, and they do not mean the same thing. The boy shrugged, pretending calm, but his jaw twitched. You can't talk to me like that. That earned the smallest smirk from Judy. Oh, I can. And I will. The bailiff shifted slightly closer, sensing tension, but Judy raised a hand. No need. She had the room and everyone knew it. The power wasn't in her gavel. It was in her stillness. She folded her hands. Tell me something, Jason. Why did you record it? He blinked. What? The video. You filmed it yourself. You're the one laughing into the camera. So why keep a record of your own crime? Jason hesitated. Because it was funny. Was? Judy repeated softly. Jason exhaled through his nose. Fine is funny. The audience's silence turned heavier than judgment itself. Even his mother, seated a few rows behind him, dropped her gaze into her lap, cheeks burning with shame. Judy's tone sharpened to a whisper. You are old enough to know the difference between a joke and cruelty. She leaned back. You want to act grown? Then you'll be treated like one. Jason crossed his arms, trying to rebuild his armor of sarcasm. You done lecturing me? Judy gave the faintest smile, the kind that always came before the storm. Not quite. She turned toward the clerk again. Bring the next exhibit. A file landed on the desk in front of her. The sound of paper hitting wood was louder than any insult. She flipped it open. Let's see what you were laughing at when you thought no one was watching. Jason's grin cracked just a little, but that was all it took for the room to feel like it had shifted. The lights dimmed a little further. The hum of the monitor filled the courtroom like a quiet warning. Judge Judy didn't speak, and she didn't have to. The truth was about to do the talking. The footage rolled again, this time slowed down. The camera, Jason's own shaky phone recording, showed the aftermath. He wasn't just vandalizing. He was performing. He faced the lens, puffing his chest. Say hi to YouTube. He'd shouted on screen, laughing as he spray-painted the word loser across the counter. The crowd's quiet gasp rippled through the room like a single heartbeat. Jason shifted in his seat. His arms crossed tighter. That's not even me, he muttered. Judy's eyebrows lifted slightly. Really? Because the person on screen appears to have your face, your voice, and your terrible sense of humor. A few muffled chuckles escaped from the audience. Not laughter of amusement, but disbelief. Jason's mother pressed her fingers to her temple, whispering something that sounded like a prayer. Judy leaned forward. Do you want to tell me what was so funny about this? Jason hesitated. His silence felt louder than his arrogance ever had. He looked at the floor, then back up, and for a fleeting second the smirk flickered. But he caught it, forcing it back into place. It's not that deep. It was a dare. A dare? Judy's tone was surgical now, precise, cutting. So you risked your future, embarrassed your mother, destroyed someone's livelihood for a dare. He shrugged. Yeah, I mean, we were bored. It's not like we hurt anyone. Mr. Whitaker exhaled sharply through his nose. You hurt everyone who watched you and thought that's what young men are now, he said, his voice trembling but steady. You think you're fearless, but all I see is someone too afraid to care. Jason looked away, jaw tight, hands gripping the table edge. For a brief moment it wasn't defiance that showed. It was discomfort. Then just as quickly arrogance returned like a shield. You're overreacting. Judy's eyes narrowed. No, Jason, I'm reacting appropriately. That's what accountability feels like. It burns at first. The camera panned closer on Jason's face, sweat now visible above his brow. The silence between them was deliberate, heavy, and almost cinematic. Then Jason muttered something under his breath. At first, no one caught it. But the microphones did. What was that? Judy asked, voice low, dangerous. He looked up, smirk twitching again. You heard me, he said. Monkey. The courtroom erupted, gasps, a few shocked cries, and then instant silence. The bailiff's hand went to his holster out of instinct, but Judy raised hers calmly. No, she said, steady. Let him finish digging. Jason froze. The grin faltered. Judy's voice softened, quieter than before but far colder. You just taught everyone in this room exactly what kind of man you are. Her hand moved toward a sealed envelope beside the bench. And unfortunately for you, she added, someone else already told me the same thing in writing. The word still hung in the air like smoke that refused to clear. Even the courtroom cameras seemed hesitant to move. Jason's smirk had vanished now, replaced by something else. Not regret, not fear, just confusion that the laughter wasn't following him anymore. Judge Judy adjusted her glasses and folded her hands. The motion was slow, deliberate, the way one closes a book they've already finished reading. "Mr. Whitaker," she said, tone composed, "you may sit." Then, without looking away from Jason, "You may want to remember this moment. It will cost you more than you think," he scoffed. "Oh, please. You gonna fine me for calling you a name?" Judy tilted her head slightly. Not for the word, for the ignorance behind it. The silence afterward was surgical. She reached for the sealed envelope. The paper made a soft tearing sound as she opened it, revealing a typed letter with a blue emblem at the top. "This," she said, "arrived on my desk this morning. From your principal." Jason blinked. What?" Judy began to read. Her voice didn't rise, didn't shake. Each word came like a steady hammer. "Jason Miller has been suspended 3 times this semester for harassment, vandalism, and insubordination. He has shown repeated disrespect toward teachers and classmates, often referring to authority figures with racial and demeaning language." Jason's mouth opened slightly. He looked around, desperate for an ally in the sea of judging eyes. His mother stared down at her lap, shoulders trembling. "We have exhausted every corrective measure available," Judy continued, "and I recommend any court proceedings take into account his pattern of behavior. Not just the recent incident." When she finished, the silence was absolute. The hum of the overhead light seemed to grow louder, like the room itself was listening. Jason swallowed. You talked to my school?" "I did," she said plainly, "because before this morning, I thought you were just another angry boy who needed a lesson in manners. Now I see a pattern, one that started long before you walked in here." He shook his head. "You don't know me." Her tone stayed calm. "No, but I know what your actions say. And right now they're speaking louder than you ever could." Jason's face flushed red. "This isn't fair." Judy leaned forward slightly. "Fairness is not what you came here for, Jason. You came here for truth. Unfortunately, the truth is rarely polite." A murmur spread through the courtroom, a mix of sympathy and awe. The bailiff shifted his stance, his expression unreadable. Jason's defiance wavered. The smirk that had once commanded attention now looked fragile, like it knew its time was almost up. Judy placed the letter down and met his eyes one last time. "You called me a monkey," she said quietly. "But the only one performing here is you." Her voice lowered to a whisper. "And before you say another word, you should know. I already spoke to the police liaison at your school. They told me what happened in the gym last month." Jason's breath caught. His eyes widened. The smirk was gone for good. Jason's chair scraped against the floor as he shifted, restless, pale. The courtroom was still, watching him the way a storm watches the ocean before it breaks. Judge Judy didn't rush. She simply lifted the second page of the letter and read with the calm precision of someone used to the weight of disappointment. During a mandatory school assembly, Mr. Miller physically shoved a teacher who had asked him to apologize for a racial slur used against another student. She paused, letting each word fall into silence. "He was suspended. His mother was called to the school but failed to appear." Jason's jaw clenched. "That's not what happened," he snapped. Judy looked up. "Then what happened?" He opened his mouth, but no sound came. The quiet stretched so long that even the hum of the fluorescent lights felt accusatory. Finally, he muttered, "He got in my face first." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "And so you decided to prove his point." Jason's mother, seated behind him, pressed her shaking hands together. "He's not a bad kid," she whispered, though her voice barely reached past her own guilt. He gets angry." Judy turned toward her, her tone softening. "Anger isn't a crime, but using it as an excuse is." The woman nodded weakly, eyes glistening. "I tried, Your Honor, I really did." Jason spun toward her. "Mom, stop talking." His voice cracked, not from rage, but something close to panic. Judy's tone cut through his outburst. "That's the first honest sound I've heard from you all morning." Jason sank back, rubbing his palms against his jeans. His arrogance was unraveling, thread by thread, but he didn't know how to stop it. Every move he made only exposed more truth. Judy picked up the letter again. It says here the school counselor recommended a mentorship program. You attended twice, then left, saying it was boring. Do you remember who ran that program? Jason frowned. Some old guy? Mr. Whitaker, she said. The room went still. The old store owner looked up, eyes widening, recognition dawning like light through fog. Jason froze. Wait, him? Judy nodded once. The same man whose store you vandalized. The same man who volunteered his weekends to teach students how to work, earn and respect people's time. The words hit like slow punches. Mr. Whitaker leaned forward, his voice low. You looked me in the eye 2 years ago and promised you'd do better. And I believed you. Jason's lips parted, but the smirk was gone now. What replaced it was something fragile, shame, raw and unfamiliar. I didn't think you'd remember. Oh, I remember, the old man said quietly, because that was the last time I thought you had a chance. Judy leaned back, folding the letter closed with deliberate care. Mr. Miller, this isn't just a lawsuit anymore. It's a mirror, and you're running out of ways to avoid looking into it. Jason stared down at the desk, his reflection trembling in its polished surface. The silence stretched again, heavy with realization. Judy's voice, low and final, broke it. Tell me, Jason, do you ever get tired of pretending you're the victim? Jason's fingers drummed against the table, restless, uneven, the rhythm of denial. For a moment he tried to rebuild that grin, the same one that had carried him through every confrontation before this one, but it faltered halfway, cracking like glass that no longer believed in its own shine. Judge Judy watched him without a word. Silence again became her weapon. The courtroom was waiting, not for his excuse this time, but for his truth. Jason's breathing grew heavier. He turned toward his mother, searching her face for a lifeline. Mom, he whispered, but she couldn't look at him. Her shoulders shook with quiet sobs, tears slipping between her fingers. Judy finally spoke. You see what you've done? She's crying not because you failed, but because you refused to see that you did. Jason's head snapped up, anger rising like an old reflex. You don't know me. You don't know what I deal with. Then tell me, Judy said, voice calm, almost gentle. What do you deal with? The words hung there, daring him to answer. For once there was no smirk, no performance, only the echo of silence pressing on him like weight. Jason swallowed. Everyone hates me at that school. They think I'm some thug, so yeah, I fight back. I say stuff before they can. And how's that working out for you? Judy asked. He looked down, jaw tight. At least I'm not the one getting laughed at. Judy leaned forward slightly. No, you're the one doing the laughing, and you still ended up here. Tell me, Jason, who's really laughing now? The boy's chest rose and fell faster. For the first time, his eyes shimmered with something close to fear. The mask of arrogance was slipping piece by piece. Mr. Whitaker spoke softly from the plaintiff's table. You remind me of my son, he said. He thought the world was against him too. Spent years fighting shadows until he realized the biggest one was his own. Jason blinked, confusion flickering into guilt. What happened to him? Whitaker's gaze dropped. He grew up. Too late. Jason looked away, pressing his palms flat on the table. The room seemed smaller now, the air thicker. Even the camera stopped moving, as if afraid to break the stillness. Judy folded her hands again. You have a chance he didn't, Jason, but you're running out of seconds to use it. Jason's throat worked, his voice cracking. Why do you care? You could just find me and move on. Because justice doesn't end when the papers close, she said softly. Sometimes it begins there. The boy didn't answer. He couldn't. The arrogance had drained out of him completely, leaving behind the raw outline of who he might have been before the performance began. Judy gave a single nod, a sign not of victory but of exhaustion, the kind that comes from hoping someone will finally listen. Court will take a short recess, she said quietly. You might want to use it to decide whether you're ready to start being honest. Jason didn't move. For the first time all day he looked like he might actually cry. As the gavel echoed, the room emptied and all but Jason sitting alone, staring at the spot where his mother's tears had fallen. If you were sitting in that courtroom, would you stay silent or speak up for him? The echo of the gavel still lingered when the courtroom doors closed. Jason didn't move. His hands trembled on the desk, but his eyes stayed fixed on the polished surface, as if it might offer him an escape. The reflection that stared back was one he barely recognized. No grin, no swagger, just the pale outline of a boy pretending to be a man. When the recess ended, Judge Judy re-entered, steps measured, presence commanding as ever. She didn't look at her notes. She didn't need to. The silence that followed her back into the room was enough to restart the entire hearing. "Mr. Miller," she began, tone even but weighted. "We will continue where we left off. You may speak for yourself now. No interruptions, no jokes. Just the truth." Jason's throat bobbed as he swallowed hard. "I already told you what happened." "No," she said quietly, leaning forward. "You told me your version of pride. Now tell me what actually happened." He looked around the room, at the cameras, at the audience, at his mother with her red, tear-streaked eyes. And for once, the audience didn't feel like spectators. They were witnesses to a boy trying to wrestle his conscience. Jason exhaled shakily. "We were just hanging out that night. My friends wanted to break in. I didn't think they'd actually do it." "But you went along," Judy said. He nodded slowly. "Yeah, and you filmed it." He hesitated. "They dared me to. Said it'd make me look tough." "And you wanted to look tough?" Jason's jaw tightened. "Everyone laughs at me, okay? I'm always the joke. I thought, if I acted like them, maybe they'd stop." Judy's gaze softened. Not sympathy, but clarity. "So you thought respect comes from fear?" Jason's voice cracked. "It worked. For a while." Mr. Whitaker leaned forward slightly. "Until it didn't," he said quietly. Jason nodded, his eyes glassy now. "Yeah, until it didn't. The room was still. No one moved, not even the bailiff." Judy's voice became almost tender. "Do you know what that means, Jason? When fear stops working." He looked up. "What?" "It means the truth finally caught up." Jason blinked rapidly, fighting tears he didn't want to show. "I didn't mean to hurt him. I swear I didn't." "I believe that," Judy said, "but intention doesn't erase consequence. You wanted control, and you traded your conscience to get it." He sniffed, wiping his eyes with the back of his sleeve. "I didn't think anyone would care." Mr. Whitaker spoke softly. "People always care, son. You just stopped noticing." The words landed heavier than any judgment. Jason's composure fractured completely. The performance was gone. Judy leaned back, letting the silence breathe before delivering the final line of the session. "You can't change what you did, but you can change who you are when you leave this room. The question is, and will you?" Jason's lips parted as if to answer, but the sound never came. Just then, the clerk approached the bench with a folded note. Judy read it once, then looked up, eyes sharp again. "Mr. Miller," she said, "your mother isn't the only one who's been paying for your mistakes." Jason froze, confusion flickering to dread. Jason blinked, unsure if he'd heard her right. "What do you mean?" he asked, voice small now, almost childlike. Judge Judy didn't answer right away. She unfolded the paper in her hands. One corner creased, the handwriting hurried but precise. "This," she said, "is a receipt. From Whitaker's store, dated 2 months ago." She lifted her gaze. "It's signed by your mother." Jason turned slowly toward her. "Mom?" His mother's shoulders hunched under the weight of everyone's attention. "I didn't want to embarrass you," she said softly. "I thought if I just paid what you owed, maybe you'd learn without everyone knowing." Jason's face drained of color. "You paid him?" Mr. Whitaker looked down at his hands. "She came to me the week after it happened," he said. "Told me you'd been suspended again, that she'd make things right. I didn't want the police involved. She begged me to give you one more chance." Jason's mouth opened, then closed. His fingers gripped the table's edge. "You shouldn't have done that." "I shouldn't have had to," she whispered, eyes wet but unflinching. Judge Judy watched the exchange like a silent conductor, letting the truth score its own rhythm. "Jason," she said finally, "your mother has been trying to pay for the damage you keep doing, but there's a debt she can't settle for you." Jason's head hung low, his voice breaking. "Why didn't you just tell me?" His mother swallowed hard. "Because every time I tried, you laughed. You said I worried too much. I thought, if I fixed it quietly, maybe I'd get my son back." The words hit harder than any verdict could. Jason's chest heaved, guilt surging through every syllable he couldn't say. Judge Judy leaned forward, elbows on the bench. "Your mother didn't cover for you out of weakness. She did it out of love. And you repaid her with arrogance." Jason's voice cracked. "I didn't mean..." Intent doesn't erase impact, Judy cut in. You think words are harmless? You called me a monkey. You mocked this man's livelihood. And still your mother, the person you take for granted, was cleaning up your mess while you were busy filming your own humiliation. The audience murmured softly, but Judy lifted her hand, silencing them without a word. Her eyes stayed fixed on Jason. Do you understand now why respect isn't given? It's earned. Every single time, Jason nodded, his chin trembling. Yeah, he whispered. I get it. Judy nodded once. Good. Then you'll also understand this. When we return from recess, you will apologize. Not to me, not to your mother, but to Mr. Whitaker. Because respect begins where arrogance ends. Jason's shoulders slumped. For the first time all morning, he didn't argue. Didn't deflect. Didn't hide. He simply nodded again. The judge gathered her papers. We'll reconvene in 15 minutes, she said, rising from the bench. As she left, the cameras followed Jason's face, pale, silent, and breaking under the weight of everything he'd just learned. In the soft buzz of the emptying courtroom, Jason's mother whispered to him, You're not the only one she called this morning. Jason looked up sharply. What do you mean? She hesitated, tears pooling again. Your father knows you're here. The courtroom lights dimmed as the audience filed out, murmurs fading into the hush of the recess. Jason sat motionless, hands clasped, his reflection trembling in the polished desk before him. The earlier arrogance and the swagger, the laugh, all of it had bled out, leaving something smaller, quieter, and human. He turned toward his mother. Her eyes were swollen, her mascara smudged, but her voice, when she finally spoke, was steady. I called your father, she said softly. Jason blinked. Why would you do that? Because you needed to hear from him, she replied. And because I couldn't carry this alone anymore. He scoffed weakly, a faint echo of his old tone. He doesn't care. He never did. The door creaked open behind them. The bailiff stepped aside, and a tall man in a worn jacket entered. His face was lined from years of hard work and harder choices. Jason froze. Hello, son, the man said quietly. Jason's jaw tightened. You didn't have to come. I did, his father replied. Your mother's been cleaning up your messes long enough. Thought I'd see what kind of man you've become. Jason looked away. You can save your lecture. I've already had one. The father gave a small, humorless laugh. I'm not here to lecture. I'm here to remind you what happens when pride eats everything else. Jason turned sharply. Don't pretend you know me. You walked out when I was 10. And I regret it every day, his father said. His voice trembled on that last word. Regret, a sound Jason had never heard from him before. But don't use me as your excuse. I broke down when life hit me hard. You're breaking other people. Jason's lips parted, but no words came. For once, he wasn't the one with power in the room. Across the aisle, Mr. Whitaker quietly observed, his weathered hands folded. The judge's bench sat empty, but her presence lingered like the echo of authority that doesn't need to be seen to be felt. Jason's mother stepped closer to her son. You keep fighting everyone who tries to love you, she said. Even yourself. The boy's composure fractured again. You think I wanted to be like this? His voice cracked. Everyone looks at me like I'm trash. Like no matter what I do, it's not enough. His father's tone softened. Respect isn't about what they see, Jason. It's about what you do when no one's watching. Jason swallowed hard, eyes glistening. You sound just like her. The judge? His father asked. No, Jason said, glancing toward Mr. Whitaker. Him. The store owner met his gaze, quiet but firm. Maybe because we both remember who you used to be, before you thought being cruel made you strong. The boy's throat tightened. His voice barely carried. I don't know who that person is anymore. Then find him, Mr. Whitaker said gently. The clock on the wall ticked louder now. The bailiff announced, Court in session in 5 minutes. Jason wiped his face, forcing his breathing to steady. He looked toward the bench where Judge Judy would soon return, then whispered to no one in particular, I think I finally get what she's trying to do. As the doors reopened, the bailiff announced Judge Judy's entrance, and she wasn't alone. Beside her stood Mr. Whitaker, holding something in his hand. A folded piece of paper, one Jason recognized instantly. Do you think remorse should erase guilt, or should justice demand consequences no matter what? The sound of the gavel pulled everyone back into place. Jason straightened, though the strength in his shoulders looked borrowed now, the pose of someone pretending not to tremble. The judge returned to her seat, and the hush in the courtroom felt almost sacred. Beside her, Mr. Whitaker stood with the folded paper in his hands. His face was calm, unreadable, as though he'd already accepted something Jason hadn't yet discovered. "Mr. Whitaker," Judge Judy began, "you've asked to address the court again. You may proceed." The old man nodded, his voice low but firm. "Your Honor, before you decide his punishment, I want him to have this." He extended the paper toward Jason. The bailiff carried it over, placing it on the desk in front of him. Jason hesitated before unfolding it. Inside was a faded photo, a younger version of himself, maybe 12 years old, grinning wide beside the same old man now staring at him across the room. They were standing in front of the store. Jason held a broom, smiling proudly. The boy blinked hard. "You kept this?" he asked. Whitaker nodded. "That was your first day volunteering. You said you wanted to earn your own money. You swept the floor for 2 hours straight and told me, 'I'm going to own a place like this one day.'" Jason swallowed, staring at the image like it belonged to a ghost. "I don't even remember that," Judy's voice came quietly. "Maybe because you buried him. The boy who thought work meant pride, not punishment." Jason looked up at her, startled. "You don't know me." "I know more than you think," she said softly. "Because I used to be you." The room froze. Even the cameras seemed to lean closer. Jason frowned. "What do you mean?" Judy leaned back slightly, hands folded. "When I was 17, I got suspended for talking back to a teacher. I thought the world owed me respect before I'd earned it. I used my anger like a weapon until it turned back on me." The words hung heavy. No one spoke. Jason stared, disbelief flickering in his eyes. "You, seriously?" She gave a small, wry smile. "The difference is I learned faster than you did. I learned that strength isn't loud. It's quiet. It's in the choice to stop performing when the world is watching." For a long moment, Jason said nothing. Then his voice broke the silence, quieter than it had been all day. "I don't know how to do that." Judy's gaze softened. "Start by telling the truth. Not to me, not to the cameras. To yourself." Jason looked back at the photo, his younger self grinning beside the man he'd betrayed. A single tear slid down his cheek before he even realized it was there. The camera caught it, not to shame him, but to show that finally something real had cracked through. Judy leaned forward again. "So, Jason, is the boy in that photo still in there somewhere?" Jason's voice trembled. "Maybe. Then find him," she said, her tone lowering like a prayer. "Before the world decides he's gone." The door at the back of the courtroom opened softly. The bailiff stepped forward. "Your Honor," he said, "the plaintiff has one more statement to make." Whitaker's eyes glistened as he turned back toward the bench. "It's time I told you both the truth," he said, voice trembling. The air in the courtroom changed, heavier, denser, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Mr. Whitaker stood slowly, gripping the edge of the plaintiff's table for balance. His voice, when it came, was rough but steady, like gravel over truth. "Your Honor," he began, "I wasn't completely honest earlier." A ripple of murmurs swept through the audience. Judge Judy tilted her head slightly, studying him with quiet curiosity. "Go on, Mr. Whitaker." The old man's eyes drifted toward Jason, not with bitterness, but with something deeper, something almost mournful. "When I said I knew this boy, I didn't mean from the youth program alone." Jason frowned, confused. "What are you talking about?" Whitaker inhaled slowly, his fingers trembling. 2 years ago, I ran a small after-school job program for kids who needed guidance. You were one of them, Jason. You swept floors, stocked shelves, worked hard for a few weeks, but one day the register came up short. $50 missing?" Jason's eyes widened. "That wasn't me." Whitaker nodded. "That's what I wanted to believe. But the next day, the security footage showed otherwise. You took it, and when I confronted you, you ran." The room went silent. Even the bailiff's stance softened, the sternness giving way to empathy. Jason shook his head, voice cracking. "That's not fair, and I was hungry, okay? My mom hadn't been home for days, and I—" His voice faltered. His mother's hands covered her mouth as tears welled in her eyes. "Jason," she whispered, her guilt spilling into the air. Judy's expression didn't harden, it softened. But her tone carried the quiet power of someone who'd seen this pattern too many times. "You stole, Jason. Then you lied. Then you mocked the man who forgave you anyway. Whitaker nodded. I didn't report it. I told myself he'd grow out of it. I thought maybe I'd failed him somehow. He looked at Jason again, his eyes glossy with memory. And then, 2 years later, I turned on my TV and saw him laughing while destroying my store. It broke me, not because of the money, because I realized the boy I forgave had turned into the man I feared. Jason's face crumpled, the truth hitting like a flood that refused to stop. You forgave me, and I still... He couldn't finish. Whitaker's voice trembled. I kept that photo to remind myself that even the worst decisions start from a good heart lost in the wrong direction. I don't hate you, son. I just don't recognize you anymore. Jason couldn't hold it together any longer. The tears came fast, his shoulders shaking as years of denial cracked open all at once. His mother moved to stand, but Judy raised a hand. Let him feel it, she said quietly. This is what truth sounds like when it finally gets a voice. Jason looked up, his eyes swollen and red. I'm sorry, he whispered to Whitaker. I didn't know how to stop. Whitaker nodded, tears streaming freely now. Then maybe this is your chance to learn. The courtroom was silent. No gasps, no whispers, only the echo of humanity stripped bare. Judge Judy leaned forward, her voice calm but cutting. You're not just here to answer for a crime, Jason. You're here because somewhere along the way, the boy in that photo stopped believing he was worth saving. And that ends today. She looked to the bailiff. Bring me the restitution documents. I have something different in mind for his sentence. Jason looked up, tears still streaking his cheeks. What kind of sentence? Her answer was soft but final. The kind you earn. The rustle of papers was the only sound in the room. Judge Judy flipped through the restitution documents slowly, her eyes scanning every line, though she seemed to already know what she was going to do. Her calm presence stood in sharp contrast to the boy in front of her, trembling hands, red eyes, a face streaked with tears and disbelief. Jason didn't bother pretending anymore. There was no grin, no deflection, just the unfiltered weight of shame sitting heavy on his chest. He swallowed, his voice breaking through the silence. Oh, you don't have to, whatever it is, I'll pay it. I'll fix it. Judy looked up. Can you buy back trust, Mr. Miller? He hesitated, the question piercing deeper than any reprimand. No, ma'am. Then stop trying to pay for it with words, she said softly. His mother sniffled quietly in the back row, clutching a tissue that had long since lost its purpose. The bailiff stood still as stone, his usual stoic demeanor now touched with quiet empathy. Judy folded her hands. I've seen arrogance before, Jason, plenty of it. But this, she gestured to him, this is something else. You thought respect was about power, about control. You were wrong. Respect is about humility, and you've spent years running from it. Jason nodded, voice trembling. I know, I didn't know how to stop. Then maybe it's time you learned, Judy said. Mr. Whitaker, seated just a few feet away, finally spoke. His tone was quiet, his words measured. Your Honor, I don't want his money. I don't even need an apology for me. But he needs to see what he destroyed. Every single day. Judy looked between them, then down at the file again. You're asking for a sentence of service. Yes, ma'am, Whitaker said. At the store. 3 months, minimum wage. He'll repair the shelves, restock, clean, and rebuild what he broke. Jason blinked in disbelief. You want me to work for you? Whitaker nodded. No, I want you to work for yourself. You'll figure out what that means soon enough. Judy let the silence settle again before she spoke. I think that's an excellent start. She turned to Jason. You'll report to Mr. Whitaker's store tomorrow morning at 9. Every day for 3 months. You'll work until every dollar of damage is restored, not by check but by effort. Jason's lip trembled. Yes, Your Honor. And if you show up late, disrespect him, or treat this like punishment instead of privilege, she continued, I'll refer this to the district attorney. Understand? He nodded quickly. Yes, ma'am. Judy leaned forward slightly, her voice softening for the first time. Jason, you can't undo the past, but you can decide whether it defines you. This right here is your line in the sand. He nodded again, this time slower, almost reverently. I'll do it. I promise. Whitaker watched him carefully, his expression unreadable but his eyes glimmering with something almost like hope. Judy raised her gavel slightly but didn't bring it down yet. Instead, she said quietly, For the record, remorse is not weakness. It's the first honest thing you've shown here. The gavel struck once. As the echo faded, Judy looked toward Jason's mother. He's not the only one who needs to show up tomorrow. Jason turned, startled. What? Why her? Judy's eyes met his, calm but unyielding. Because rebuilding doesn't start with punishment. It starts with family. The next morning, the bell above Whitaker's store jingled softly, the same one Jason had once shattered. This time he froze under its sound. It wasn't a chime anymore. It was a reminder. Sunlight streamed through the dusty windows, catching particles of flour and thyme in the air. Mr. Whitaker stood behind the counter, sleeves rolled, expression even. A broom leaned against the wall beside him, old wooden, worn smooth by years of use. Jason stepped forward slowly, his mother at his side. She carried a small thermos of coffee, though her eyes betrayed the sleepless night she'd spent before this morning. Whitaker nodded once. You're on time. That's a start. Jason managed a quiet, yes, sir. The older man pointed to the broom. So you know what to do. Jason picked it up, fingers brushing the handle. He remembered. It was the same broom from the photograph. His throat tightened. He started sweeping, each motion careful, deliberate, like a prayer made of small movements. Judy's words echoed in his mind. Respect isn't spoken. It's shown. Outside, through the store's front glass, Judge Judy's production crew quietly filmed the follow-up segment. The judge herself had chosen not to appear, insisting the story didn't need her presence to finish, only Jason's actions. Whitaker watched him for a while, saying nothing. Jason's mother moved quietly, restocking shelves beside the register. Occasionally, she'd glance at her son, not with pity but with fragile pride. Hours passed. Dust turned to sweat. Jason's back ached, his palms burned, but he didn't stop. For once, he wasn't trying to look tough. He was trying to do right. At one point, a customer entered, a woman who paused, recognition flickering in her eyes. "Aren't you that kid from TV?" she asked. Jason froze. The shame hit him like a second wave. Whitaker stepped forward before the boy could answer. "He's not that kid anymore," he said simply. "He's working." The woman nodded quietly and walked away. Jason looked up at him, breathless. "You didn't have to say that," Whitaker shrugged. "Didn't do it for you. Did it for the boy in that photo?" Jason's lips parted, but no words came. He just nodded and kept sweeping. By noon, the floor gleamed, polished to a mirror's shine. Jason leaned on the broom, exhausted. Whitaker approached, placing a small bottle of water on the counter. "You did good work," he said. Jason hesitated, then asked softly, "Do you forgive me?" The old man smiled faintly. "Forgiveness was never the question, son. The question was whether you'd forgive yourself." Jason blinked back tears, but they came anyway. His mother walked over and wrapped her arms around him. And for once he didn't pull away. Through the window, the light shifted and golden. Forgiving. Back in her chambers, miles away, Judge Judy watched the footage on a small monitor. She didn't smile, but her eyes softened, the faintest exhale escaping her lips. "That's what justice looks like," she murmured. Later that evening, Jason sat outside the store, hands still raw, staring at the sunset. His phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. He opened it. One sentence glowed on the screen. "Keep going. The broom teaches best when the floor is already clean. JJ." The store was closing. The lights had dimmed to a soft amber glow, painting the aisles in a kind of twilight peace. Jason wiped the last of the counters clean, each motion slower now, not from fatigue but from something quieter. Reverence. Mr. Whitaker stood behind the counter, counting the register. His movements were steady, practiced. The only sound was the soft hum of the ceiling fan turning lazily above them. Jason set the cloth down. "Mr. Whitaker," he said, voice low. "Can I talk to you?" The old man didn't look up. "You just did. But go ahead." Jason took a deep breath, his chest rising and falling like someone bracing for impact. "I've been trying to think of the right words all day, but I think I already used up all my wrong ones." Whitaker looked up then, his weathered eyes steady. "Go on." Jason swallowed. "When I said those things in court, when I trashed your store, I thought I was proving something. I thought if I acted like I didn't care, nobody could hurt me. But all I did was hurt people who tried to care." The old man said nothing. His silence wasn't judgment. "It was permission," Jason continued, voice cracking. "You gave me chances I didn't deserve, and I spit on them. You believed in me when I couldn't even look at myself. I called you names, destroyed what you built, and you still showed up. He looked down at his hands, blistered, raw but clean. You didn't have to forgive me. You didn't have to let me work here. But you did, so I'm sorry. Whitaker's eyes softened. He didn't speak right away. He closed the register drawer gently, then came around the counter. You done? Jason blinked, confused. I think so. Good, Whitaker said. Now listen. He placed a hand on Jason's shoulder, the weight firm but kind. You don't earn forgiveness by saying sorry. You earn it by becoming someone who doesn't need to say it again. Jason nodded slowly, his voice barely above a whisper. I'll try. You won't just try, Whitaker corrected. You'll do. Every day. You'll mess up. You'll fix it. That's the job. Jason's lip trembled, but he managed a faint smile. Yes, sir. Whitaker patted his shoulder once, then stepped back. Now go home. You've done enough sweeping for one day. As Jason turned to leave, he paused at the door, the little bell above it ringing like punctuation on a long confession. He looked back. Thank you, he said softly. Whitaker gave a small nod. See you tomorrow, son. Outside, the night air was cool. Jason stood for a long moment under the fading neon sign before walking away. His reflection briefly mirrored in the store window. The same boy, but finally changed. Back in her office, Judge Judy reviewed the follow-up report. Her assistant waited for instructions, but Judy just smiled faintly. No further orders, she said. The world's already teaching him. The camera lingered on her face, calm, resolute, satisfied. The next morning, Jason returned to the store early, finding a new broom propped against the door. A gift tied with a note in Whitaker's careful handwriting. Keep it. Not as punishment, as proof. Before you hear the verdict, tell me, can anyone truly change, or do people just get better at hiding who they are? The courtroom was full again, but it didn't sound the same. No whispers, no laughter, no restless shuffle of feet. Just quiet. The kind of quiet that comes after understanding, or something close to it. Judge Judy sat poised at the bench, a calm gravity in her eyes. Across from her, Jason stood beside Mr. Whitaker. His posture was straight, his hands clasped in front of him. The boy who once walked in smirking now stood in silence, not as a defendant, but as someone ready to listen. Judy looked at him for a long moment before speaking. Mr. Miller, she began, you've spent the past 3 months cleaning a store you once destroyed. Tell me what you learned. Jason took a breath. His voice came out steady, soft, but clear enough for every microphone to catch. That words can break things just as easy as fists. That pride feels strong, until it's the only thing you've got left. And that respect doesn't come from people fearing you. It comes from them trusting you again. A murmur of approval rippled through the gallery. Judy didn't smile, but something in her gaze warmed. You've been paying attention, she said. Yes, ma'am, Jason replied. For once. The audience chuckled gently. Even Judy allowed the faintest hint of amusement to flicker across her expression, but it vanished as quickly as it came. She leaned forward slightly, tone returning to that crisp precision that made her famous. What you did was cruel, she said plainly. You mocked, you vandalized, you humiliated people who only tried to help you. And yet, instead of walking out of here with a record, you were given the chance to rebuild what you broke. That chance doesn't erase your guilt. It redefines it. Jason nodded. I know. So I'll spend the rest of my life proving that chance wasn't wasted. Judy studied him for a moment longer. You will. Because from now on, every choice you make will either confirm or betray what you claim to have learned. She turned toward Mr. Whitaker. And you, sir, have shown more grace than most would in your position. You didn't ask for revenge. You asked for redemption. This court recognizes your compassion as the reason this outcome is possible. Whitaker bowed his head humbly. Sometimes, Your Honor, the hardest thing isn't forgiving them. It's remembering they're still worth forgiving. Judy's eyes softened again. She turned back to Jason. Then I'll make it official. She lifted the gavel. This case is closed. Restitution completed. Judgment entered in favor of humility. The gavel struck once, not loud but final. No one clapped. No one gasped. The silence that followed was its own verdict. Jason turned to Whitaker, then to his mother sitting in the front row. She smiled through quiet tears, whispering something only he could hear. I'm proud of you. As Jason walked toward the exit, he paused to glance back at the judge. She didn't wave. She didn't smile. She just met his eyes, a silent acknowledgement between two people who had seen each other at their worst and still chosen belief. The camera lingered on Judy's face as she looked down at her papers, her voice a calm murmur to no one in particular. Respect isn't demanded. It's demonstrated. Her pen stopped moving. The courtroom lights dimmed to gold. Arrogance shouts, but truth waits in silence until someone finally listens.